Millionaire, moved seeing black beggar praying for daughter in coma and uncovers secret. Robert stood outside the cold hospital doors, his expensive coat doing little to keep out the biting wind. 2 years. 2 endless, cruel years staring at machines, hoping for a sign, a flicker, a blink, anything from Claire, his daughter, the light of his life, frozen in a silent storm of coma. His breath hitched as he watched the night stretch darker around him. Every second felt like a punch straight to his gut. The hospital lights flickered behind him, taunting, cold and distant. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw her, a small boy, no more than 8, kneeling right there on the pavement. His clothes hung in tatters, skin darkened by the city's grime. But it was what the boy was doing that stabbed Robert's chest. The kid's head bowed low, hands clasped tight together, lips moving in a soft, desperate whisper. Prayer. Not the kind you expect from polished folks in holy places. No, this was raw, fierce, pure hope spilling from a dirty mouth. The boy's eyes were closed so hard it looked like he was speaking to someone invisible. Something inside Robert cracked. He stepped closer, heart hammering. Why here? Why now? Why this child? The boy didn't look up, didn't even flinch when Robert's shadow darkened over him. Lucas, that's what the boy whispered his name was when Robert finally spoke. His voice was small, but filled with a warmth Robert hadn't felt in a long time. Every day after that, Robert found Lucas waiting, not just at the hospital doors, but in the halls, by the machines, whispering those fierce prayers. The nurses exchanged cautious glances. His family whispered in corners. Some called the boy a miracle. Others, a bothersome shadow. Lucas spoke of Claire as if she could hear every word. Told Robert, she feels love. She knows we're here. The hope in that boy's voice was contagious, stirring a strange fire beneath Robert's frozen despair. For the first time, the cold money and harsh doctors seemed less important than the simple truth Lucas carried. Love might reach where science failed. But Lucas wasn't just a kid with hope. He held secrets, dark and jagged like broken glass. Pieces of a childhood Robert could barely imagine. Abandonment, pain, loss. The more Robert learned, the more tangled everything became. And as Claire showed hints, faint movements, breaths deeper than before, a storm brewed inside Robert's own family. Greed, suspicion, whispers of cashing in on Claire's condition. Faces he thought he knew, twisted into something ugly. Robert's hands trembled. Losing Claire once to silence was one nightmare. Now losing her to those around him felt worse. Could love really protect them? Or was everything doomed to crumble? Then, late one cold evening, as a fragile hope bloomed in the sterile room where Claire lay, Robert found a letter slipped under his car door. No name. Just a chilling message from a past he thought buried. A figure he had never wanted back. The paper felt heavier than gold in his hands. A shadow stretching over his fragile new world. Could Robert survive what was coming? Could he protect Claire? And what price would this boy with fierce prayers have to pay? The answers whispered in the dark, like secrets waiting to explode. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. A lot of subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without warning. Just take a quick look at that red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any of the exclusive content coming your way. And while you're here, hit that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Robert stood frozen, the letter feeling like a weight of lead in his hand. His heart raced in his chest, fear coiling tightly. But he needed to read it. He needed to know. He unfolded the paper slowly, eyes scanning the jagged scrawl. The words blurred as panic surged. I know about your daughter. I have information. He glanced around. No one was watching. The world felt distant, like he was sealed in a bubble. His fingers trembled as he read on. If you want her to wake up, you must meet me at midnight, alone. The chill from the wind sank deeper as dread settled in the pit of his stomach. Who was this? How did they know Claire? His mind raced, tumbling through chaos. Lucas, with his fierce prayers, came to mind. Was it all connected? He had to talk to the boy. Surely Lucas knew something. He wasn't just a homeless child wandering the hospital. There was a wisdom in those worn eyes that pushed Robert to seek the truth. He tucked the letter back under his coat, clenching it like a lifeline. Robert? A voice jolted him. It was Alice, his wife. Her face was strained, tight. She must have sensed something. Are you okay? Yeah, just a lot on my mind, he lied, forcing a smile. You're not yourself. You've been distant, she said, searching his eyes. He wanted to tell her, to share the letter, the meeting. There was so much at stake, but fear of what he might uncover kept him silent. I promise I'll tell you soon. Alice nodded, though her gaze bore into him, filled with worry. They both knew the truth had turned fragile in their hands. A silent understanding hung between them. Hours passed as Robert paced, awaiting the appointed time. The hospital's lights continued their dull hum, casting an eerie glow on muted conversations that faded into the background. He found himself outside again, where the cold air bit sharply. Lucas was there, sitting on the pavement, eyes closed, lost in a prayer. The boy's voice broke the silence, soft, yet powerful. She hears me. I know she does. Frustration flared within Robert, mixing with a flicker of hope. Lucas, I got a letter. It's about Claire. He knelt to meet Lucas's gaze. Do you know who sent it? The boy's eyes snapped open, wide with fear, shadows flickering across his youthful face. You shouldn't trust it. People, they want to take her from you. Before Robert could respond, a commotion erupted nearby. A woman's voice, shrill and panicked, pierced the air. Stop! Don't touch him! Robert turned, confusion twisting his stomach as he saw two figures. A man and a woman, faces lined with desperation, were trying to pull Lucas away. The man shouted, "Come home! You're not a charity case!" Lucas, what's going on? Robert reached for the boy, but Lucas shrank back, fear etched into every feature. Please, I have to go! Lucas's voice cracked. Panic became a living thing in Robert's chest as each word gnawed at him. No, no, you have to stay. I need to know. Then everything shifted. A woman stepped forward, her gaze piercing. Don't you understand? He's not a beggar. He's Claire's brother. Time froze. Stunned silence enveloped them. Shock washed over Robert like a tidal wave. How could this be? The boy, his warmth, his prayers, his brother? The revelation slammed against his heart. Who even were these people? What kind of tangled web was this? The truth swept in, stealing courage from his bones. How much more did he need to unravel? And with that, a chilling thought echoed in his mind. If Lucas was Claire's brother, what tied them together? What had he missed? The world spun, confusion and clarity fighting for dominance. As Lucas turned to run, the last breath of their connection hung in the air like a whisper. Could Robert keep Claire safe when he didn't even understand what was happening? And where did that leave Lucas? The night felt darker now. The answers shrouded in uncertainty, whispering a question more profound than any before. What had he truly gotten himself into? Lucas turned to run, his eyes wide with terror, the last breath of their connection fading against the chaos unfolding around them. Robert's heart raced, panic clawing at his throat. The man and woman pulling Lucas, desperate to take him away, felt like a storm brewing. "Wait! You can't just take him!" he shouted, adrenaline fueling his every word. But the woman's gaze locked onto him, intense and fierce. "Stay out of this. He belongs with us," she yelled back, the conviction in her voice unmistakable. Before Robert could respond, chaos erupted. The sound of screeching tires sliced through the night. The sleek, black car skidded to a halt, doors flinging open. Two figures jumped out, their faces hidden behind dark masks. In an instant, they were charging towards Lucas. "Run!" Robert shouted, instinct taking over. He lunged for the boy, reaching out just as Lucas stumbled back into his path. But the mass intruders were quicker. One of them grabbed Lucas, yanking him away with a force that made Robert's breath catch. "No!" Robert's voice split the air, raw desperation spilling over. He surged forward, but the crowd that had gathered now became a sea of eyes, all watching, but no one moving. They were frozen, the tension thick and suffocating. "What do you want with him?" Robert demanded, fists trembling at his sides. But the masked figure only smiled, the expression cold and devoid of warmth. "Your daughter is crucial to us, and so is he." Robert felt the world shift beneath his feet. Crucial? What did they want with Claire? The pieces of the puzzle swirled in his mind, confusion tightening like a vice around his chest. He felt Alice's hand grip his arm, her voice breaking through the fog. "Robert, this isn't safe. We have to back away." But that command only fueled his resolve. He had to protect Claire, protect Lucas. "Tell me what you know," he yelled, preparing for any fight that might come. But before he could move, the other masked figure pulled out something shiny, a small device glimmering ominously. "Stop, or we'll take him." Robert's heart dropped as he realized they weren't just threats. They had something planned. He watched as the flames of danger flickered in their eyes, and suddenly everything went black. A blinding flash that stumbled forth like an explosive heartbeat, the world silencing around him. When Robert blinked back into awareness, chaos swirled. Lucas was gone. The crowd was in disarray, screams piercing the night. Panic swept over Robert like a powerful tide. "Lucas, no!" He pushed against the throng, desperation clawing at his throat, but it was like wading through syrup. Everything moved too slowly. Shadows danced, and lights flickered erratically. In the distance, sirens wailed, getting louder, but it all felt surreal, like a nightmare he couldn't escape. Then he caught a glimpse of a figure slipping through the alley, darting away with a speed that made his heart sink. "Lucas," he yelled, but the boy was lost in the mayhem, swallowed by the darkness. A feeling of horror washed over him, gnawing at the edges of his mind. Suddenly, Alice screamed, pointing towards the alley. "Robert, look!" He turned to see another figure emerge, this time holding a baby, a tiny, fragile, dark-haired infant, swaddled in a blanket that looked eerily familiar. Robert's world tipped. The baby burst with an overwhelming sense of recognition that struck him like a thunderbolt. "Claire?" he whispered, voice trembling with disbelief. But as the figure hurried forward, lifting the blanket, Robert's heart shattered. It wasn't Claire. The baby's face twisted into a cry. The mix of features, not a single thread connecting to his daughter. "It's not her. It's for you to understand what you've lost," the figure shouted, the words laced with a chilling resonance. And in that moment, everything changed. Robert's breath caught, shock ripping through him like a jagged blade. He was left hanging. What did they mean? What had he lost? And most horrifying of all, what had Claire become? As the darkness enveloped him again, doubt sank deep. Nothing was as it seemed. The night felt alive, with more secrets than he could fathom, and he'd just scratched the surface. What horrific truths were yet to be uncovered? Could he trust anyone? Could he still save Claire? The flickering shadows whispered ominously as uncertainty gripped him tighter, leaving him to wonder if he had any hope left at all. The darkness cloaked Robert as he took a shaky step back, trying to reconcile the chaos around him. The baby's wail pierced his heart, but the realization that it wasn't Claire twisted like a dagger in his gut. In the mayhem, his mind raced with unanswered questions. Why the charade? Why this child? Swaddled, but not his daughter. He turned, eyes scanning for Lucas, desperate to find the boy who'd rekindled a glimmer of hope. But the alley was empty. Shadows had swallowed him whole. Panic surged, and he felt the walls closing in. "Lucas," he shouted, his voice raw. The masked figures disappeared into the throng, taking the boy and his innocence with them. Robert felt a shiver crawl up his spine. There was no sign of Lucas, only fleeing crowds, frantic faces, and sirens growing louder. Then Alice grabbed his arm, shaking him slightly, her expression jagged with fear. "Robert, we need to go, now." He opened his mouth to argue, but a sudden explosion erupted behind him, a burst of light and sound that sent everyone reeling. Blinded by the flash, Robert shielded his face, but as it subsided, a strange hush fell over the crowd. From that stillness, an unmistakable figure emerged, a gaunt man stumbling forward, wild-eyed and wide with panic. It took a moment for Robert to make the connection. This was Mark, his brother, the one who had grieved Claire's death alongside him, never lost a moment of mourning. The brother he thought had been in a different state, too fractured by the news. "Robert!" Mark cried, tossing glances over his shoulder, as if expecting danger to materialize behind him. "We need to talk. There's no time." "Mark, what are you doing here?" Robert managed, confusion swirling within him. "You shouldn't be—" "No, they're coming. They know." Mark gasped, the desperation leaking from him like a broken dam. "You need to hear this. It's about Claire." Robert's heart thudded. Everything felt like a twisted nightmare. Mark had been the last connection to Claire's past life. And now he tumbled into this dark web. "She's not who you think she is," Mark breathed, the words spilling out like poison. "They've changed her. You need to understand. The doctors, they hit it. They're not just keeping her alive. They're experimenting. She's not your little girl anymore." The world froze in that moment. Robert felt every fiber of his being snap. "What do you mean?" he choked. "What are you saying?" "It's a secret," Mark stumbled, hand gripping Robert's shoulder as the crowd murmured, unsure of what to make of this revelation. "They used her in ways I can't explain. And Lucas, he knows." The tremor in Mark's voice struck Robert hard. He wanted to deny it, but the pieces began falling into place, dark and tangled. Was it all connected? Did Lucas understand the gravity of it all? Had he been sent by the same forces manipulating his family? "Stop. Don't say any more," Robert pleaded, his breath coming fast. The shadows danced around him, everything teetering on the brink. "You can't put this kind of weight on me. Not now. I need answers, not more questions." Mark's eyes glistened with fear and remorse. "They're coming, Robert. They want control of what she is now. You must protect her, and Lucas. You have to trust me." In that heartbeat, the sirens blared louder, distress filling every echoing cry. But the stillness had shattered. Panic swept through the crowd as figures began to emerge from the shadows again, drawing everyone's attention to the chaos. Robert's heart thundered, fear gripping him as if the world had spun out of control. Could he believe Mark? Could he trust anyone, let alone the truth of what lay ahead? The reality crashed over him like a wave, threatening to pull him under. And at that very moment, a cry erupted from the alley, a voice filled with pain. "Lucas!" Robert's blood ran cold. All he could think was that nothing was as it seemed anymore. People, secrets, his own flesh and blood. How intertwined were they now? Was Claire still in there, fighting for a chance? Darkness loomed as Robert realized just how dangerous the game had become. And now, with everything on the line, he stood at a crossroads. Was he walking towards salvation for his family, or into the depths of despair? The question hung in the air, electrifying and terrifying. The answer lost in the shadows closing in around him. Robert's heart thundered as he stood at the crossroads of fear and desperation. The shadows loomed closer, whispers of danger curling around him. But nothing felt as terrifying as what Mark had just said. "They've changed her." Those words echoed in his mind like a haunting refrain. "Mark, what do you mean?" he gasped, gripping his brother's arms. But before Mark could answer, a loud crash shattered the tension. Fragments of glass exploding from a nearby storefront. Gasps erupted from the crowd. As people scrambled in every direction, in that brief moment of chaos, Robert lost sight of Mark. Panic seized him. "Mark!" he called out, his voice lost in the din. He pushed past bodies, eyes darting around, searching for his brother. The world around him spun wildly. He felt as if he were drowning. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw a familiar figure. A little boy, darting between the legs of stunned bystanders. "Lucas!" With a rush of relief, Robert lunged forward. "Lucas!" he shouted, urgency brimming in his voice. The boy stopped, turning with wide, fearful eyes. But in that instant, masked figures re-emerged from the chaos. They rushed toward him. Dark shapes against the flashing red-and. Blue lights illuminating the scene. Fear twisted in Robert's gut. "Get away from him!" He pushed forward, but the masked figures were too quick. Lucas bolted towards him, just as one of the figures lunged, grabbing the boy. "No!" Robert screamed, adrenaline surging through him. He lunged, arms outstretched, ready to fight. But then, suddenly, with a deafening roar, the ground beneath them shook. An explosion rumbled in the distance. A blinding light engulfing the street as chaos erupted again. It wasn't just any explosion. It was near the hospital. "Claire!" The name tore from his throat, raw and desperate. He felt like he was slipping away from everything he cared about. He needed to get to her. But just as he turned to shove through the crowd, he caught sight of Mark again. But there was something wrong. Mark stood frozen, staring at the chaos unfolding with wild, frantic eyes. Robert felt a pull of dread, clenching in his stomach. "Mark, come on! We have to!" But before he could finish, Mark's hand found a device at his side, something small and metallic. A device that gleamed with an unsettling familiarity. "Mark, put it down!" Robert shouted, confusion flooding his voice. "Are you out of your mind?" But in that moment, Mark's face transformed. His expression twisted into something darker, more sinister. "You don't understand, Robert. This is the only way." The crowd buzzed around them, the noise stretching into a cacophony of confusion. "What do you mean?" Robert felt the air grow cold between them. "What are you talking about?" Mark raised the device, pulse racing. "I've been trying to protect you, to protect Claire, but it's too late now." Before Robert could respond, a blinding light surged from the device, illuminating Mark's face in stark relief. In that moment of brilliance, a horrible realization hit Robert like a punch to the gut. The device wasn't just a tool, it was a weapon. And in that flash, Mark's transformation was complete. He wasn't just a grief-stricken uncle trying to save Claire. He had become a part of this terrible conspiracy. With the blinding lights still flickering around him, Robert felt the ground shift beneath their feet. Everything that had felt certain was now slipping away. "Mark, what have you done?" he gasped. But as he shouted, the air crackled, a dangerous energy suffusing the atmosphere. Mark's lips curled into a smile, one devoid of love, one of something darker. "Say goodbye to your past," he whispered, and in that instant, everything shattered. Suddenly, Robert felt the pull hard, the world blooming into chaos, not just around him, but deep within him. Shadows wrapped tighter around his heart, uncertainty flooding back in. In that instant, as the light pulsed ominously and the crowd screamed, the walls of reality warped and twisted. "Robert!" a voice yelled. It was Alice. But as he turned to face her, she fell back, her eyes wide with a terror indescribable. "Run!" she shouted, but it was too late. The ground splintered, the air ignited with energy, and everything that once felt solid shattered. In the midst of that insurmountable chaos, Robert realized that nothing would ever be the same. Only shadows would remain. shadows that whispered deadly secrets, leaving him standing at the brink of a dread he couldn't fully grasp. As the blinding light cracked through the air, Robert felt the cold tendrils of panic pulling him under. "No, no," he shouted, but those words felt weak against the storm. Shadows danced as the chaos surged around them. He turned back to Mark, disbelief tightening inside him. Then he caught sight of Alice, her eyes wide with fear, as she stumbled backward. "Alice!" he cried, reaching for her, but the air was thick with tension, a brittle silence stretching between them. "Robert, get back!" she yelled, dread clawing at her voice. Her gaze was locked on Mark. He was standing there, weapon gleaming, a strange fire in his eyes. But before he could comprehend what was happening, Mark pressed a button. The device pulsed with a low hum, enveloping them all in an intense wave of energy. A shock wave surged forward, snapping everything into stillness, like a paused movie. And then, a deafening roar erupted around them, a sound that twisted the very air. A blinding flash lit up the night, painting the surroundings in stark white. It was not just an explosion. It was a rupture, a tear in the fabric of reality itself. "Robert!" Alice's voice seeped through the chaos, filled with an urgency that shook him to his core. But as the light receded, a heavy silence settled in. The crowd's screams faded, but the echo lingered, slicing through the stillness. Robert blinked, struggling to catch up, trying to pull himself from the shock. Then, in that eerie calm, he noticed something. Someone missing. Pushing through the haze, he searched frantically, heart racing. Lucas was gone. "Lucas!" he shouted again, but his voice felt lost in the chasm of uncertainty. Mark's face twisted in rage and panic, desperate and wild. "What have I done? They'll come for us all." Robert's mind reeled, the pieces of their fractured reality scattering like leaves in the wind. He reached for Alice, but her features morphed, confusion sliding across her face. "Mark, what's happening?" She breathed heavily, as if she could barely grasp the moment. But just as Robert turned to her, everything shifted again. "Stay back!" a voice echoed from the edge of the crowd. A woman stepped forward, dark hair cascading over her shoulders, eyes fierce yet familiar. "It couldn't be! It's you! It's really you!" Her voice echoed another time, pulling him into a memory buried in the shadows of his heart. Claire's laughter floated back to him, distant but unmistakable. "Is that my sister?" Tears welled in Robert's eyes as he stared into that depths of that familiar gaze. But the twist was sharper than a knife. This wasn't just a sister. This woman held the weight of truth in every hollow expression. She had been lost, but not in the way they thought. "Claire?" he whispered, the name an echo of longing, rising in betrayal. I'm not who you think I am. I've changed." Her voice trembled, the weight of each word heavy with unsaid horrors. "They took me, Robert. Before she could finish, something shifted again. A crack in the air, and then she was gone, swallowed by the chaos. "No, Claire!" he screamed, heart racing with despair. But it was too late. She faded before his eyes, lost, like everything else. Alice shook him, tears streaming down her cheeks now. "Robert, we have to go. We have to leave." And then the world spun, shadows swirling. Nothing felt real. Nothing made sense. All the threads were unraveling. relationships fracturing under an unfathomable weight. Mark's expression morphed to something dark, almost shameful. "It's starting," he muttered, grasping the device tightly again, eyes darting around. "What's starting? What did you do?" Robert could hardly breathe, the air heavy around him. But Mark only shook his head, reality fracturing further. "You don't understand. It's all connected." With that, the crowd erupted into a panic, sirens closing in, voices shouting warnings, and Robert felt the ground shifting beneath him. Where was Claire? As the night cloaked them, a dark truth hung in the air, one that would challenge everything they believed. What had they truly opened? What had they let in? Everything felt still, as if they were caught in time. Robert's heart raced, confusion swirling with heartache. "Claire?" he called again, desperation tearing at his voice. The echoes mingled with the panic swirling in the crowd. Alice clutched his arm tighter, her eyes wide with fear. "Robert, we need to go," she urged, pulling him back. But he couldn't move, couldn't think. Each second felt like a day. Then, as Mark's expression shifted from panic to something darker, everything seemed to collapse. "It's starting," he murmured, gripping that device like it was the key to the whole mess. Robert felt a chill creep down his spine. This wasn't just about Claire anymore. It was something far more sinister. Before he could demand answers, the device hummed violently. The air thickened, as if charged with electricity. Robert could feel it crawling across his skin. The shadows shifted, growing darker and more menacing. The terrain of their reality twisted, as if a rift were opening before them. And then, a loud crack filled the air. It didn't come from Mark's device, but from the outskirts of the chaos. Robert turned to look. There, in the midst of the confusion, was a shimmering figure, the outline of a woman. His breath caught. Claire? But as the figure stepped into the light, the illusion shattered. It wasn't Claire. It was someone else. Her face was hauntingly familiar, yet so different. "You shouldn't have come here," she said, voice steady but laced with sorrow. "Who are you?" Robert demanded, his heart pounding in his chest. "I am the one who," she began. But then the shadows swirled again, cutting her off. The crowd gasped collectively, as the light throbbed painfully, warping the very air around them into a dizzying kaleidoscope. Everything erupted into chaos once more. Suddenly, Mark raised the device higher, its glow intensifying. "No, stop!" Robert shouted, as panic engulfed him. Then, in one alarming moment, the device emitted a scream, sharp and piercing, like glass shattering. The shockwave blasted through the crowd, sending bodies tumbling. Robert braced himself, instinctively, pulling Alice close. The woman's eyes widened with understanding. "You've opened the door," she screamed. Everything felt like it was happening in slow motion. The world around him twisted, contorted, and then fell apart. Time held its breath. Light exploded from Mark's device, revealing the darkness lurking beneath reality. The woman staggered back as a figure emerged from the light. A figure Robert instantly recognized, yet couldn't believe. Mom? But the woman wasn't just any mother. Not the one he remembered. This was the mother who had been lost to him, who had faded away years ago. The same one he thought he had buried deep in memories, shackled by guilt and pain. "You don't understand what you've unleashed," she cried. Tears, blending with hopelessness. This isn't just about Claire or Lucas. This is bigger, darker. The crowd erupted into lodging cries, conviction transforming into pure fear. Faces twisted in shock, murmurs of panic ricocheting around them. Who were these individuals? What was going on? "Mom, how? Why are you here?" Robert stammered, his knees weak under the weight of it all. "Because it all connects," she whispered, each word soaked in urgency. "We were never meant to leave you. I protected you, and now you're in danger?" Everything Robert had known shattered into a million pieces. Mom's arrival twisted relationships, revealing darkness where there should have been light. He felt everything crumbling, reshaping, and he didn't know who he could trust. "Get away from her," Mark shouted, backing away gingerly. The panic, the lies, the whispering shadows, it all transformed in those moments. Chaos exploded. Amid the madness, Robert's mind raced with the reality unraveled before him. What have I gotten into? In a heartbeat, everything twisted again. Was Claire still in there? And who else had been changed? Truths tangled in ways nothing could prepare him for. Doubt raced in his veins, heart hanging on to the precipice of despair. Without the light from Mark's device now, shadows grew darker, whispering dreadful secrets, and Robert realized he was standing on the edge of an unknown abyss. Where would it lead him? Would he ever see Claire again? The ground felt like it was crumbling. Beneath him, fear coursing through his veins. What darkness awaited him? Robert stood rooted in the chaotic aftermath, confusion swirling in his heart. "Claire?" he had whispered. The shadows had grown heavier, denser, as his mother's face seemed to flicker in and out of view. The reality of her return, it felt like a dream, but the fear etched on her features was all too real. "Robert!" Alice's voice pulled him back, but it felt distant. "We have to go. We can't stay here." There was panic in her tone, and Robert felt his chest tighten. Could they really escape whatever horror loomed before them? But everything was spiraling out of control. Mark was still standing there, the device in his hands, humming ominously. Robert's head swirled with questions. Was Mark truly his brother? Had he just betrayed him? The weight of uncertainty pressed down hard, but he couldn't dwell on that now. They'd lose everything if they hesitated. Out of nowhere, a blinding flash erupted from the device, casting harsh light against the chaos. The crowd gasped, and Robert squinted as shadows danced wildly around them. The ground shook beneath their feet, sending waves of panic rippling through the crowd, and in that moment, Mark's expression sharpened like a knife. "It's not just about Claire," he shouted, eyes gleaming with something that felt perilous. "I didn't choose this for any of us." Time felt suspended. With the explosion ripping through the air, Robert's mind raced. Everything started to blur. Faces became indistinct shadows. The sounds of screams faded, and then it happened. The device pulsed brightly, and a crack tore through the fabric of reality itself. Suddenly, Robert could see into the shadows, see through the veil of reality, and the sight nearly made him collapse. There, standing amongst the darkness, was Lucas. But he wasn't just the boy who whispered prayers. His hair was longer, his eyes sharper, imbued with an otherworldly glow. "Lucas?" Robert's voice trembled, the name slipping from his lips like a wish. But this was not the boy he knew. "Robert, You need to listen, Lucas called, a sound like thunder rolling. I hold pieces of this world you don't understand. I am. But the words cut off, and the collective gasp of the crowd echoed around them. It wasn't just Lucas. The shadows behind him shimmered, a blur of familiar faces twisting, all entwining in a dance of darkness. They were connected, all of them, intertwined in ways Robert could never imagine. I'm your daughter's keeper, Lucas finished, the air around him pulsating. An aura radiated from the boy, one that felt alive with power. No, Robert whispered, disbelief flooding through his veins. What did he mean? Keeper? Mark's eyes widened with the dawning understanding. He's been sent to... But before he could finish, a scream ruptured through the heaviness. A woman, a stranger but with familiar eyes, eyes like Claire's, pushed through the crowd, hands raised. No, your daughter isn't gone. She's part of the shift now. Robert felt the world tilt on its axis, every nerve ending sparking. Part of the what? He gasped, realization slamming into him. The crowd buzzed with frantic voices, layered confusion wrapping around their panic. The devices hummed violently. Shadows pressed in closer. You don't understand the tug of fate that binds us all, the woman yelled. Then time warped again. Just as Robert reached for Lucas, the device exploded with blinding brilliance, and everything felt like it was fracturing, an irreplaceable pearly shard caught in chaos. Robert's vision swam, darkness enveloping him more than ever before. Shouted commands turned to a cacophony of murmurs and fear. He felt Alice slipping from his grasp. Heart racing, breath hitching, he realized he had to choose. Stay with the tangled threads of his family or unravel the mystery of this new truth. In that split second, everything he thought he knew shattered into fragments, and a chilling thought struck him. Lucas was changing, and so was Claire. They weren't the lost souls he had mourned. He had opened the door to a deeper darkness. Could he reclaim their past, or had they become something else entirely? The world fell into that unnerving dark, the shadows whispering secrets louder than ever. And the question hung in the air like mist. Would he be trapped in this nightmare forever? The dark pressed in from all sides, twisting Robert's heart as he took a step back. Confusion mixed with dread, and the air crackled with a tension he couldn't shake. Claire? He called again, desperate for a sign. But the shadows swallowed her voice whole. Mark clutched his device tighter, his face a mask of terror. You need to stay back, Mark shouted, his voice trembling. It's too late. What do you mean? Robert's voice was thick with emotion. The walls of reality closing in around him. The whispers in the air felt alive, fearful, and electric. The crowd was lost to fear. Their collective panic pulsed like a heartbeat, drowning out reason. And then, as if the world itself had split apart, a thundering roar erupted. In the distance, shaking the ground beneath them, the sky seemed to crackle, and a blinding light shot forth, morphing the night into chaos. People screamed, scattering like leaves in a tempest. Run, Alice yelled, grabbing Robert's hand, but he was frozen. Lucas, bathed in the eerie glow, stood before them, eyes wide with something akin to horror. You don't understand. She's not just changed. She's... But before he could finish, the ground shook again, deeper this time, unsettling the very essence of their reality. A fracture opened between Robert and the figures of Mark and Lucas, splitting them like fabric. And amid the chaos, that familiar face, yet stranger, appeared. The face of Claire's mother. "Mom?" Robert gasped, the world blurring. "But you're... how?" "Robert, listen to me, it's important." Her voice cut through the noise. "Lucas has power, unspeakable power. And Claire, she's become more than you can fathom." Brief memories surged. Her warmth, the way she used to hold him close. But now her eyes reflected only sorrow. "You need to run, she can't control it." "What do you mean, she can't control it?" Robert barely recognized his voice, fear gripping his throat. What have they done to her? But before he could process the words, an explosion ripped through the alley, showering them with shards of darkness and light. Robert instinctively shielded Alice, but the light swelled, enveloping them all. Mark pressed a button, and suddenly, everything exploded into brilliance. Thousands of emotions crashed over Robert. Fear, anger, desperation. Everything joined forces in a garbled mess. And then a scream pierced the fabric of their moment. "No!" It was Lucas, his voice filled with a panic that twisted inside Robert like a knife. As the blast light fizzled around them, something in the corner flickered and moved. A shadow that didn't belong. Robert turned, breath stuttering. A figure stepped into the illuminated space, but their face was shrouded. "Why do you have her?" The words rang out, deep and textured. The figure took a step forward, and Robert's heart dropped. It was Claire. Or what he thought was Claire. The girl before him wore his daughter's face, but there was something off, a darkness that curled around her like smoke, something darker than just the absence of light. "Dad, save me!" she cried, voice tremulous, yet laced with something he couldn't place. His stomach dropped further. Claire? Panic flooded through him, but then the figure morphed, shifting and transitioning into a shadow that twisted horrific shapes, tendrils reaching for Mark, for Lucas, for Alice, and suddenly it crystallized. The entire time, it hadn't been Claire in the shadows. It had been a dark reflection, a thing that accidentally mirrored his daughter, but was never truly her. "What have you done?" Robert surged forward, but was held back by the pressing shadows, heart racing in confusion. "She isn't my Claire." The onlookers gasped, silence chilling the air. Doubt and horror filled the space, leaving Robert teetering on the edge of the abyss. And then the horror struck. With a brilliant flash, the darkness erupted outward, revealing countless silhouettes. People, lost souls, all connected by the swirling shadows. Children, women, men, each face echoing pain, betrayal. They reached out, crying out for deliverance. What is happening?" Robert's voice barely broke through the cacophony, a solid punch of despair. "Lucas," he cried, panic clawing at him. "Help us! Help Claire!" But as Lucas turned, his expression shifted. "You don't get it," he murmured. "They're all a part of her. And Claire? Maybe she never wanted to be saved." Chill coursed through Robert, and the closer he stepped toward the shadows, the more vibrant the faces became. Each cry resonated, twisting into a haunting harmony, leaving him with a terrifying question. What had he unleashed when he prayed for hope? The answer dangled before him, shrouded in darkness, a darkness that whispered of irreversible change, a truth so vast it threatened to consume him whole. And he couldn't help but wonder if Claire was ever truly there to begin with. Robert felt the weight of the world crack under his feet as the chaos swirled around him. The darkness seemed almost to breathe, shadows creeping closer. Lucas, standing his ground despite the trembling shadows, called out, "Listen, the connection is stronger than you think. Each of us holds a piece of Claire." Every tension in Robert's body pulled taut as hope flickered. "We can find her," he yelled, desperation in his voice. "We have to fight for her." Alice tugged at his arm, her face pale. "No, Robert. We might be losing her forever." But under her fear, he could see a flicker of belief. "That's what they want," Lucas interjected, his voice a force. "We cannot let fear consume us." Suddenly, the shadows surged, swirling like a tempest, voices rising in a twisted chorus of agony. Robert could feel his mother's presence, hear her voice, woven within the cries. "You have to be stronger than this chaos. Remember the love. That's where she is." With a sudden realization hitting him like a bolt. Love. Yes, that was then. Lifeblood threading them together. "Claire," he shouted, feeling the pulse of connection growing stronger. "Claire, we're here. We believe in you." For a heartbeat, the shadows stilled. An awareness hung in the air, a moment suspended. Robert focused on that connection, grasping it tightly. Then Lucas stepped forward, closing his eyes as tears spilled down his cheeks. The boy's voice, once so fierce, was now filled with sweetness. "You taught me how to love." He whispered into the chaos. "You said love is powerful. We can reach her." The shadows surged, swirling around them frantically, as if shaken by a great wind. Silence pierced through the tumult, a moment's quiet, as if the entire world held its breath. Then, from that stillness, a soft glow flickered in the distance. "I can hear you," a familiar voice broke through, gentle yet strong. Robert's heart exploded with joy, the darkness receding just enough to catch glimpses of the light. "Claire, we're coming for you," he called, hope igniting that spark. And just like that, the scene erupted. Robert and Alice reached toward the light, and suddenly, the tendrils of darkness unraveled. Light surged forth, enveloping them, and then a radiant form emerged. Claire stepped forward, not the frail girl they had known, but a luminous figure, an embodiment of hope and courage. "Dad!" she cried, arms outstretched. "Mom, I've been longing for you." Robert rushed forward, meeting her halfway, hugging her like he might. "Never let go. I thought I lost you." Tears streamed down his face. "You're safe now. We're together again." As the warmth of her presence wrapped around him, he felt the shadows retreat further, losing their hold over the crowd. The others gasped, witnesses to their reunion, as it filled the air with an electric hum. Mark, still in shock, but visibly shaken from his dark intentions, stepped forward. I didn't know. I just wanted to save you, all of you." But Robert shook his head. "We don't need saving. We need to love." As if in reply, Claire's eyes glimmered, and she turned back to Lucas. "You are family too. Let's not forget that." The boy nodded, hope reigniting in his heart. Together they stood, Robert, Alice, Claire, Lucas, and beneath them, the shadows began to lessen, fading against the light. Together, they would weave their past into a brighter future. As the oppressive darkness began to lift, they turned toward the crowd, still processing everything that had happened. "We won't forget those lost along the way," Robert shouted, letting his voice carry. "Their light lives in us." With Claire beside him, hope surged through him. Their fears began to melt into warmth. It was not just about survival. It was about love, unconditional, fierce, and protective. But the journey wasn't over. The questions hung in the air, teasing their thoughts. Would the darkness ever return? What other secrets waited in the shadows? And, as Robert looked into Claire's eyes, he felt a gust of winds change again. They would face what came next, together. Now, listen closely. You need to subscribe right now to the channel so you don't miss the exclusive stories coming your way. Stories that will grip you and pull you from the dark. Smash that like button to feed the algorithm and help us reach more incredible fans like you. Flood the comments with your reactions and theories. What do you think happened to Lucas? Did Claire transform again? And don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this finale. Your support matters. This is the moment to show your love for the channel.